For more on this, let's bring in historian and professor at Princeton University, Julian Zelizer, and politics editor for TheRoot.com, Jason Johnson. All right, good to see both of you.
Good to be here.
All right, so Julian, you first. 1%. Trump is actually polling behind the third-party candidates when it comes to African-American voters. So is the RNC trying to drum up African-American support thinking about the congressional races, or does this mean this campaign is including Donald Trump?
Well, this has been a problem for the Republican Party for decades. They've struggled to win African-American votes. They've been on the wrong side of many issues, such as voting rights recently. So it's diminished their support. And then comes Donald Trump, which has just doubled down on the damage. So I think they're very worried about this. It's cost them in certain states like North Carolina over the past few election cycles. So I think this is in part congressional races, but really more of a long-term issue.
Are you clear on what issues, the RNC is trying to focus on that would appeal to African-American voters? Because in a lot of the material that I read, it's not really specific about what those issues are. If the issues that appeal to African-Americans are different than the issues that appeal to most Americans.
Well, traditionally, they do focus on alternatives on economic policy. We've seen this since the 80s, talk about enterprise zones and ways to revitalize African-American communities through private incentives. And that's, I assume, what this will be about. But then you have issues like voting rights, which the Republican Party will need to address, especially when Donald Trump is calling for private citizens to monitor voting right now. I think they're going to have a much broader look if they really want to be serious about this.
And then, Jason, you wrote an op-ed for The Root that reads in part, the team is tasked with the impossible, sell the Republican Party to black voters in the era of Donald Trump. The mission is tougher than just finding a way to make Trump palatable to black voters, something akin to convincing a vegan to add the bacon double Whopper to his diet. What do you mean?
What I mean is I know a lot of vegans, and I know a lot of black Republicans. I did an interview with Ashley Bell, who's based here in Georgia, who was just brought in to be part of their outreach team, and they're having trouble. These are long-term committed African-American Republicans, but it is very difficult to sell these down-ticket races when you've got Trump at the top of the ticket, who has been cavorting with members of the Klan, whose rallies often have racial invective being thrown around, going all the way back to him, questioning Barack Obama, whether or not he was an American citizen. So it's been a really hard sell. I don't know if the Republican Party can get Trump from 1% black vote in Ohio to the 15 he needs to be competitive.
That's
with
why
only
I wonder,
90 days
is
left.
that the mission for this election for Donald Trump, or is it a bigger picture scope of worried about the Senate and, House seats?
Well, that's the thing, Fred. It depends on who you ask, because you have some people who are really committed saying, look, this is part of what Chairman Reince Priebus has been saying all along. This goes back to the Big Ten of 2013. The problem is Reince Priebus is out next year. There's going to be a new RNC chair. They don't know if they're going to win this presidency or not. So we don't know if any of these efforts will continue past November 8th.
Okay. And then, Julian, the Trump campaign, held a big event at a black church in North Carolina last weekend. We had a couple of people who were advocating for it, who were organizing it, who said, that this is just the usual. It wasn't an unusual thing to try and get this particular church to be on board with Donald Trump, or at least the pastor there advocating for Donald Trump. So is that an anomaly, or is there a wave, of I guess, advocacy for Donald Trump in the African-American community already being exhibited?
I don't think there's much evidence of that we can point to. There are stories such as that, but there's no data to support any kind of wave. He's going to have to do a lot more than certain appearances and even certain statements, which he hasn't made yet, to really change this. I don't think Donald Trump can change the kinds of percentages he's seen, and I think that's why this is coming from the RNC. As with immigration, there are parts of the party that say this is the wrong direction if we're going to be competitive in the next few election cycles.
And then, Jason, there are a lot of African Americans who can't get past there's my African American.
Right. Well, people
that was out of the words of Donald Trump.
If that was the only
out of the mouth of Donald Trump.
If that was the only thing, it'd be fine. It's not like Bill and Hillary Hillary Clinton having said things, but it's the housing discrimination. It's the I don't want black guys counting my money. It's all these different things that Donald Trump has said. And I'll be honest, I think some of his surrogates haven't been helpful either. I know lots of black voters who aren't convinced by Pastor Darrell Scott. I know lots of black voters who don't find many of his surrogates to be convincing. And I don't think the effort is sincere. There's money that could be spent by the RNC and the Trump campaign to get African Americans back on the boat. Remember, George Bush got 10, 12%, and they're not doing it.
All right, Jason Johnson, Julian Zelizer, thanks so much to both of you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.